In Greek mythology, love does not always bring complete happiness. Tragic stories of young lovers who die due to misunderstandings, unrequited love that turns a maiden into a laurel tree, or love that crosses the sea only to be drowned by storms are haunting examples. These tales show that love can be a guiding light, but it can also be a consuming fire when fate cruelly plays its tricks. Today, I will tell you 4 heartbreaking love stories from Greek mythology. 1. The story of Pyramus and Thisbe. Pyramus and Thisbe were 2 passionate lovers who lived in Babylon, an ancient and famous city. They were neighbors, living in adjacent houses, and their love blossomed through encounters at a crack in the wall that separated them. This proves that true love not only overcomes all barriers, but even finds a way through the smallest gaps. However, due to a long-standing feud, their families forbade them from seeing each other. Despite being forbidden, their love never faded. They often spoke to each other through a small crack in the wall connecting their homes. Honestly, I find this a bit confusing. If their families hated each other so much, why did they build a shared wall in the first place? But then again, without it, there wouldn't be a story to tell. Through whispered words and exchanged promises, they longed for the day they could meet freely. Pyramus and Thisbe decided to defy all obstacles. They secretly arranged to meet outside the city, under a large mulberry tree near a stream. Oh, and by the way, back then, mulberries were white, not red like they are now. They vowed to escape together and build a life of freedom. Thisbe arrived at the meeting spot first. While waiting for Pyramus, she suddenly saw a lion approaching, its mouth stained with blood from a recent hunt. Terrified, she ran into a nearby cave to hide but accidentally dropped her veil. The lion did not chase her, but found the veil, tore it apart, and stained it with blood before leaving. When Pyramus arrived, he found Thisbe's bloodied and tattered veil. He immediately assumed that she had been killed by the lion. Overcome with grief, Pyramus decided he could not live without Thisbe. He drew his sword and took his own life under the mulberry tree. His blood seeped into the ground, staining the tree's roots and turning the white mulberries into a deep red. Love makes people blind, one might say, so blind that seeing a torn veil was enough for Pyramus to believe his beloved had been devoured. If only he had taken a moment to properly investigate the scene, this tragic love story might never have inspired Shakespeare. After ensuring that the lion had left, Thisbe returned to the meeting place to find Pyramus. But when she arrived, she discovered his lifeless body. Seeing the blood, the sword, and the tragic misunderstanding, she realized what had happened. In utter despair, she took Pyramus's sword and ended her own life, falling beside her lover. Honestly, the real cause of this tragedy wasn't the lion, nor the veil, it was the lack of a phone to send a simple "Are you okay?" message before making rash decisions. If they had won, this whole story could have been avoided. If there were an award for the most unrealistic love story in history, I would undoubtedly vote for these 2. Did they not stop to think, if we both die, who will be left to tell our love story? Before dying, Thisbe pleaded with the gods to allow them to be buried together and for the mulberries to forever remain red, as a reminder of their love and tragic fate. The gods, moved by their devotion and sacrifice, granted her wish. From that day on, mulberries turned a deep red, symbolizing passionate yet tragic love. Are the red mulberries a symbol of love? Or rather, a warning to always verify information before making life-altering decisions? The story of Pyramus and Thisbe has inspired many literary works, most notably William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Indeed, Pyramus and Thisbe's story is a vivid testament to how love can be blind, and how tragedies often stem from misunderstandings that could have been easily avoided if they had remained calm. 2. The story of Apollo and Daphne. Apollo, the god of light, music, and arts, was renowned for his charm and extraordinary talents. One day, he mocked Eros, the god of love, claiming that he was just a mischievous boy playing with a bow and unworthy of such a noble weapon. Annoyed, Eros decided to take revenge. He shot 2 arrows, a golden arrow into Apollo, making him fall madly in love, and a lead arrow into Daphne, a beautiful river nymph, making her despise love. Apollo instantly became infatuated with Daphne and relentlessly pursued her, not only because of her beauty but also because her resistance made him desire her even more. However, Daphne, with her cold heart, adamantly rejected him. She cherished her freedom and had no desire to be bound by love or marriage. She fled, while Apollo chased after her, showering her with praise and declaring his deep, sincere love. Yet, the more he spoke, the faster she ran. But as a god, Apollo never tired, while Daphne gradually became exhausted. As he was about to catch her, Daphne, in desperation, called out to her father, the river god Peneus, for help. Answering her plea, Peneus used his divine power to transform Daphne into a laurel tree just before Apollo could reach her. Daphne truly embodied the saying, "If you can't escape love, just turn into a tree, it works even better than blocking someone." Apollo watched in sorrow as Daphne slowly transformed, her hair became leaves, her arms turned into branches, and her feet took root in the earth. He embraced the tree, mourning his loss, yet he vowed to love her forever. Apollo surely learned a painful lesson: running faster does not guarantee winning someone's heart. Sometimes, people just want to be trees. From that day on, the laurel tree became a symbol of glory, used to create wreaths for poets, heroes, and athletes. The laurel represents not only victory and honor, but also the ultimate escape. If there were a competition for mythological love chases, Apollo would undoubtedly win first place, but sadly, he still wouldn't win Daphne's heart. Eros was truly a mischievous god of love. With just one shot, he created a lifetime of drama between Apollo and Daphne. This story reminds us that love should never be forced. And if someone keeps running away when you chase them, perhaps it's time to stop and plant a tree with them instead. 3. The story of Hero and Leander. Hero was a priestess of the goddess Aphrodite, living in a tall tower near the Hellespont Strait, now known as the Dardanelles. She was renowned for her extraordinary beauty, but as a priestess, she was forbidden to love or marry. Leander, a young man from the town of Abydos on the opposite side of the strait, met Hero at a festival and was immediately struck by love at first sight. Hero also fell in love with Leander, despite the strict rules governing her life as a priestess. Their love was so passionate that Leander was willing to swim across the strait every night just to be with her. To help Leander find his way in the darkness, Hero lit a lamp at the top of her tower, serving as a guiding light. Each night, Leander braved the freezing and perilous waters to reach her. Under the glow of the moon and Hero's lamp, they shared brief yet precious moments of love. However, life does not always favor lovers. One fateful night, as Leander was swimming across the strait, a sudden storm arose. Fierce winds and towering waves extinguished Hero's guiding light. Without the beacon to direct him, Leander lost his way amidst the raging sea. Exhausted and disoriented, he was ultimately overcome by the waves and drowned. The next morning, Hero found Leander's lifeless body washed ashore. Overwhelmed by the unbearable pain of losing the one she loved most, she leaped from the top of her tower into the sea, ending her life to be reunited with Leander in death. Their story remains one of the most tragic love tales in Greek mythology, a symbol of love that transcends all boundaries but is ultimately powerless against nature and fate. Leander was truly an Olympic-level swimmer of ancient times, but unfortunately, there were no medals for him, only tragedy. If only there had been a boat hailing up back then, Leander wouldn't have had to swim, and they might have lived happily ever after. Hero's lamp served as a guiding light in love, but it also reminds us that no matter what we do, checking the weather forecast first is always a good idea. Honestly, if Hero had invested in a storm-resistant lantern, perhaps their story would have ended differently. The tale of Hero and Leander teaches us that love sometimes requires more than passion, perhaps a life jacket and a better lamp as well. But regardless, their bravery stands as a testament to the power of love that defies all barriers. 4. The story of Medea and Jason. Jason, the leader of the Argonauts, was a famous Greek hero tasked with retrieving the Golden Fleece, a legendary treasure that granted power and prosperity. During his journey, Jason arrived in the kingdom of Colchis, where King Aetes guarded the Golden Fleece. Medea, the daughter of King Aetes, was a powerful sorceress blessed with magical abilities by the goddess Hecate. Upon seeing Jason, Medea was struck by one of Eros' arrows, making her fall in love with him at first sight. King Aetes set impossible challenges for Jason to earn the Golden Fleece, but Medea, out of love, decided to help him. Using her magic and cunning, she aided Jason. She tamed the fire-breathing bulls by applying a magical ointment on Jason, protecting him from burns. She helped him defeat the army that sprouted from dragon's teeth by advising him to throw a large stone into the soldiers, causing them to fight and destroy each other. Finally, she put the dragon guarding the Golden Fleece to sleep, allowing Jason to seize the treasure without harm. After obtaining the Golden Fleece, Jason and Medea fled from Colchis. To ensure their escape, Medea killed her own brother, delaying King Aetes' pursuit. This act remains one of the most controversial in mythology, demonstrating Medea's absolute loyalty to Jason but also revealing her ruthless nature. Medea and Jason married, had 2 children, and settled in Corinth. However, their happiness was short-lived. Jason, driven by ambition and a thirst for power, abandoned Medea to marry Glauce, the daughter of King Creon. This betrayal sent Medea, who had sacrificed everything for Jason, into a furious rage. Her revenge was brutal and meticulously planned. She gifted Glauce a wedding dress and a crown laced with deadly poison. The moment Glauce wore them, she was consumed by flames. Her father, King Creon, perished trying to save her. To inflict the ultimate pain on Jason, Medea killed their 2 children before escaping on a chariot drawn by dragons gifted to her by Helios, her grandfather. In the end, Jason, having lost everything, lived in sorrow and isolation. Medea, though victorious in her revenge, found no happiness. She wandered the world, carrying her grief and hatred forever. Jason was the perfect example of the question, was it worth it? He gained the golden fleece, but lost everything due to his thirst for power. Meanwhile, Medea wasn't just a skilled sorceress, she was the undisputed queen of vengeance. Jason surely never expected that the consequences of marrying the wrong woman would be this catastrophic. He should have remembered, never betray a woman with magic. They don't just love deeply, they know how to make you remember them forever. Jason's life was truly a journey from Greek hero to legendary failure. If he had the time, he could have written a book titled How to Ruin Your Life in 3 Easy Steps. The tale of Medea and Jason highlights that love can be a great source of strength, but when betrayed, it can turn into a destructive fire. And Jason, perhaps more than anyone, learned this lesson the hard way. The 4 love stories in Greek mythology each have their own unique nuances, yet they all share a tragic ending. Whether due to misunderstanding, rejection, the fury of nature, or betrayal, these romances were all cruelly torn apart by fate. Through them, mythology not only celebrates the intense power of love but also warns that when love is left unprotected or pushed beyond its limits, it can become a source of immense suffering. These stories leave behind lessons on sacrifice, loyalty, and the consequences of making the wrong choices in love.